If one does not keep step with the others, perhaps he hears a different drummer. That crossed my mind when I was seated there. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to start by saying hello to the Honorable Chairman of Tourist Board, Mr. Damika, and then to the two guests who had come all the way from the United States, Mr. and Mrs. Smith. I forgot your first names. What's it? Okay, I can call you Mr. and Mrs. Smith. That's good enough, right? Thank you. And my friends from the aviation fraternity, ladies and gentlemen. I did not come here to hear any applause because I don't have many nice things to say. But I want to tell the truth. And I'll begin by saying I am fascinated by the opulence of this gathering, the way it was, who I know very closely, and his team, because he obviously could not have done this by himself. He's done it so well, and I'm very happy, and I think we should give a big hand to that aviation voice and day. Now, since I finished that part of it, let me get back to the story. I was seated here and listening to the chairman of the tourist board, and he said something very, very nice, which I knew, and it pleased me more to hear from him right from this forum. He said, we are going to be 3 million tourists by the end of this year, and we are going to be 5 million tourists in 2030. Now, he didn't tell whether it was the beginning of the end of 2030, but let's take it as the end, which means from the 1st of January of 2026, we have 5 years to make it 5 million. I think that's a beautiful vision. I can't see him here, but I hope he's there. And that's the thing that I'd like to hear in this country. Because for 77 years, in aviation, whether it be airport or whether it be aeroplanes or whatever we did, far too often we missed the bus. And at most times we did not miss the bus. We missed the cruise ship. That's why we are in this state today, in debt, having an airline. And then someone like Mr. Hevavasam comes up and says, he's got the vision. The rest of you here should be happy he has a vision and do whatever you can to achieve that. And I think that is where we should be going. And let me talk about how I think we can help his vision. The best way to do that is to find out where we are today and see how we are going to get there. Let's call 2.5 million people today. We'll have to increase by another 2.5 by 5 years. So 5 million. And I'm going to talk about the airports and I'm going to talk about the airline, because the rest of it I do not know about hotel rooms and how they bring people and how they are transport to different places. Those things I don't know, but aviation I know something about, and I'd like to talk about that. Now, if you have doubled your incoming tourist, does that mean we have to build another Sigiriya? No, nothing like that. Do we have to somehow go and bring another Anuradhapura into existence? No, they are all there. Or we have to go to the hill country and then put up some new hills because the amount is very high now, 5 million? No, none of those things are needed. We don't. So what I wanted to say is that if we are going to bring aeroplanes and bring people in, we have a classic example in Mali. Mali does not have a big airline or anything like that. But every airline in Europe is coming to Mali, bringing passengers. And they are quite happy to have those tourists coming in. Unfortunately, that's not what we want. We want others to bring the passengers, definitely. We want Emirates to come, Singapore Airlines to come, Cathay to come, all that. But in our own shows, we have an airline that started in 1948. And 77 years later, we got to take best possible care of it, improve it, to catch this new wave of 5 million tourists. Today, I'm going to give you figures. Of course, I don't know the exact figures, but I know there are people from Sri Lankan Airlines here who will either vouch me or laugh at me. That's okay. We have 24 aeroplanes to cater for 2.5 million people. So in 2030, we need double that figure when it goes to 5 million. So we need to have another 25 new aeroplanes added to the fleet to bring these tourists, plus the other airlines coming in. Point is, 25 new aeroplanes needs 150 crews, which means 150 captains and 150 co-pilots. That's a very big number. The problem is, today I spoke to a very senior training personnel in Sri Lankan Airlines, a pilot, and he told me, unfortunately, we train about only 10 pilots a year. So how do you take care of the 150 pilots we need in 5 years when we are doing 10 a year? We will end up with only 50. First thing, to fulfill that vision Mr. Hevavasam has, the airline has to find a way to train pilots. Not to say there's a bottleneck. Bottlenecks are always there. But if you have a bottleneck, you've got to break the bottleneck. So the first thing I'm saying is that aeroplane coming in from here, we got to start training pilots, training engineers to get those pilots up in the sky. That's what it is, number one thing. And it is not something that is impossible. It is impossible when you don't do anything. That is how we missed the cruise ship all these years. So we got to sit down and work out, and that has to be worked out with the civil aviation, very important because they are the custodians of aviation. Then we got to talk to airports and aviation because they run all the airports. And then Sri Lankan Airlines. But if these three people are talking to themselves in closed doors, forget it. I am sorry to say, Mr. Chairman of Tourist Board, your vision is fine, but you got to have the teams to work together to get that vision. So that aeroplane story has to be discussed at length. I can't do this in 10 minutes and explain to you, but the main figures are, we need so many pilots to be trained. Now don't tell me that we have so many schools and so many pilots and all that kind of fairy tales. We can have schools and we can have pilots, all that, but it all depends on to what level they are operating. The fact remains that Sri Lankan trains 10 pilots a year, and that is the biggest hurdle that we have to jump if we are going to get more tourists coming here carried by Sri Lankan Airlines aeroplanes. That's the first thing. Second thing I want to tell you, we know that 2.5 million people are coming through the airport. 5 million coming through the Bandaranaike International Airport means so many other aeroplanes are coming here. Simple thing. I do not know how well you know this business of aviation, but we have an airport which is very, very good. Runway is very, very good, but it does not have high-speed taxiways. Now let me talk in very simple language to tell you what a high-speed taxiway is. When a captain comes to land and he leaves the runway and goes to the apron, if it is a 90-degree turn, he has to turn that at less than 10 knots. But if you have a high speed taxiway, he can turn between 50 to 60 knots. That means a very quick out of the runway. If you go to Gatwick, you all know Gatwick, they do 30 flights an hour, 2 minutes to get in and get out. But we, through all these years, have never thought of getting high-speed taxiways. That's a simple thing. That doesn't need billions to put simple taxiways. We haven't done it. Second thing is, supposing we have these 5 million tourists coming with all these aeroplanes, where are we going to park them? Now people, I'm sure there are people from airport authority here, you have to look and say, hey, we got to have parking space to put these aeroplanes when they come. Yes, I am not here to give you suggestions. Suggestions are like fairy tales. Everybody can say that. I am here to show you a possible solution. And if it is not possible, that's fine. But at least I have the happiness of coming and telling you that there is a solution. One solution, very simple solution. Move the Katunayaka Air Force Base to Mattala. Please think about it. I am not talking, I'm not whistling Dixie here. I also know something of aviation. The Air Force is so very important to the country. The pilots are there, the whole Air Force is there. Then we have an international airport that today had about 1 or 2 aeroplanes for the last 10 years. Now what kind of international airport is that? Now that is bad enough. Then you have another international airport called Colombo International Airport, Ratmalana. I'm sure there are people here who are working in Ratmalana. How many aeroplanes came to Ratmalana, international aeroplanes? In any case, it can't take a lot of planes because it has only a 1,400 meter runway. So we are really looking at something that is not possible to have an international airport in Ratmalana when it does not have enough runway length. Never mind all that, it does not have even a landing aid. Now, if you think I'm talking absolute nonsense, please give me the benefit of the doubt for the moment and go and speak to somebody from Ratmalana Airport and ask him whether he has one landing aid, not 2. And what is the length of his runway? 1,400 meters. Not even a 737 can land on it. So that is a problem. So, if the Air Force takes a whole of Mattala, that cost of maintaining Mattala goes to the Air Force. They can use it. There's a lot of space all over in that area. And whilst they use it, any commercial jet can come there. There's no problem. Bangkok had Don Muang with Air Force aeroplanes landing and civilian planes landing. There are so many places in the world that can do this. So that is another big advantage. Now supposing the Air Force moves to Mattala, that whole northern side of the airport is free. It's a huge area. All you got to do is have the vision to do that, have a small terminal on north of the runway and make the entrance from Katunayaka to that. That way, half the passengers who come will leave from that side. And if you have a little bit more sense to think about, make a 2,500 meter runway on that side, a small runway. Now when you say 2,500 is small, you might think, okay, how can these big aeroplanes come? I think this lady and the gentleman are originally from the UK, right? You know Newcastle. There's an airport there which has a 2,300 meter runway. So I'm only talking of 2,500. Newcastle is 2,300. And Emirates flies every day with a 777 to that 2,300 meter runway. So they can do that in Sri Lanka also. So please ladies and gentlemen, who have some kind of a vote or some kind of a clout in the thinking business of aviation, this same story I said to a similar audience 2 years ago, and at that time the Minister of Aviation was seated right in this seat, right in front. And I told, please think about this. This is what you need to do. Not to have an empty airport in Ratmalana and another empty airport in Mattala and call ourselves great aviators. We are not. There's no applause in this story. There's sadness. Sadness because I've seen in more than half a century of time, I've watched this whole drama coming to stage, leaving the stage when the curtains are down, and leaving worse than when they came. That is why we are in debt. That is why we are losing. We have the vision. For God's sake, let that vision work. That way we can do it. And that cannot be done by having separate entities controlling aviation, not talking to each other and seeing what is commonly best for the country. I am only speaking on behalf of aviation and my country. That is what I am saying. All this time we had a beautiful policy in Sri Lanka, in aviation. Unfortunately, that is what we followed. You know what the policy was? Answer is no. What is your question? Don't laugh. And please don't applaud me. I didn't say things to be applauded. I just wanted to tell you the truth. We need to have the vision and the power to chase that vision. And we have the people. There's absolutely no doubt about it. I have absolutely no doubt about it. If Singapore can bring 15 million tourists to see Santos Island and Orchard Road, we should be able to at least bring 15 million to see this beautiful country. And wasn't this country the one that is voted today as the most beautiful island? We have that all free. We have an entire infrastructure. Only problem is we are not peddling. Thank you.